Did you miss it? Let's watch it again. Could someone please explain to me how in the hell do the Spanish have turkeys in this point in time? Because I always thought that they were native to North America and haven't even been discovered yet. No, it's true. What a long and melancholic sound, and I think you get the point. He's talking about shitting and farting there. I could go on, but I think you get the picture.
Fuck me. It's like something out of the Bible.
This 5-minute shot from Atonement shows more activity on the beach than the entire runtime of Dunkirk. This is what 400,000 Men is supposed to look like. So when we go back to Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, it looks pretty shit in comparison. Now the French get a bad rep for surrendering, but this could have been a great opportunity. However, these films are so ingrained into pop culture that scenes that once moved us. Now make us laugh.
Survive! I'm going for the flag.
You shouldn't do that.
Why not?
We're deep in enemy territory. We've got to choose our moment carefully.
This place is swarming with ace. They're not just in the jungle. They are the jungle.
What do you think this is? Vietnam?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's all right, honey.
Movie, are you seriously trying to tell me that this woman is so fucking gormless that she's only learning about racial segregation now? It's 1964! It's the height of the civil rights movement! One of the biggest and most influential political movements in US history! She should know this stuff simply by being alive. Honestly, what was going through her mind when she was watching the March in Washington in 1963?
I have a dream that one day...
Oh my god, this guy's like so boring. Why is everyone telling me to watch this? There's no racism in this country. It must be like some sort of like liberal agenda or something. I'm gonna change the channel. I like cartoons.
White House anticipates a build-up and wants a victory over cavemen in black pajamas.
We wouldn't be there if they hadn't already beaten the French army.
The French army? What's that?
Now, this just could be potential French bashing. Yes, cavemen in black pajamas managed to defeat both the empires of Japan and France.
I have conquered, spilt blood, expanded the empire.
Oh, really? That map? You conquered all of that? Wow, the ego on this guy. Don't you think you're laying it on a bit thick, mate? Expanded the empire? You expanded jack shit. The last emperor to expand the empire was Trajan, and I really doubt that he would take credit for the rest of it as well.
This is a pleasant fiction, isn't it?
Knowing all of that, this scene takes a total turn when Marcus Aurelius says,
My decision disappoints you?
Fuck yeah, it disappoints him! You made him spend his whole childhood preparing for this, only to take it away at the last possible second? You're the cruelest parent imaginable, no wonder he fucking hates you so much.
You're a crook. You're a cheat and a swindler. That's what you are. How can you do a thing like this? Build up a little boy's hopes and then smash all his dreams to pieces. You're an inhuman monster.
You only need to look at examples of rich trust fund brats today inheriting their daddy's millions, times that by 1,000, and you get a good idea of what Commodus's reign was like. However, the real Commodus, little shit that he was not sympathetic at all. So bear that in mind. Could you imagine if they recreated that scene in Gladiator with Russell Crowe choking out a naked Joaquin Phoenix? I doubt even Hans Zimmer can make that scene look epic. I have no idea what's more gross, the lyrics or the fact that there is a choir of school children singing them. Actually, what am I talking about? This is a generic run-of-the-mill Mel Gibson movie.
But if you're asking me, am I willing to go to war with England? Well, then the answer is most definitely no.
It is! Because the next thing that always happens is that the English come in, kill his family, and thus forcing him to take up arms against the English in the name of freedom. It literally is a precursor to the Patriot.
In the name of the gods, get him out of here! Now look at you! Great wind-up! I don't know what we're yelling about!
You can make do with a few close-up shots of the crowd. All you really need is a great script and performance. But instead they went with this.
Blah, blah, blah. The law this and the republic that.
I mean, like, seriously, this movie's so full of inconsistencies that it might as well be set in a magical kingdom with dragons and stuff flying around, and it probably would have made more sense. In that case, you can forget about this movie even attempting to be accurate. Here we go again with another case of classic Hollywood making compromises with history to drive this stupid cliché plot.
He was a man of peace, living on a quiet farm in North Dakota. Till one day, all hell broke loose.
Tim, we need you! I'm a man of peace. I'm done killing. I want to raise a family. That's just it, Tim. They've got your family. No!
After all, it's not enough to stick it to the Englishman. Mel Gibson also had to stick it to the Englishman's wife. And yes, I have total justification in making fun of that romantic subplot, because Princess Isabella couldn't have had an affair with William Wallace since she was 9 years old at the time of his death and was still living in France. So, unless William Wallace was a teleporting paedophile, then I struggle to see how this is possible. Oh, really? Then, why didn't you use that same approach when you wrote and directed We Were Soldiers? Seriously, how come that movie was handled in a respectful and mature way to its historical source material, but in Braveheart he wanted to capture a spirit or a feeling or some other such rubbish? And what's funny to me is that he was totally aware of this when he wrote the script. Well, challenge accepted, my friend, because I most certainly do, and I'm going to give you my reasons why. Oh, and before any of you out there say I'm only picking on this movie because I'm English, just know that my father's side of the family are descended from the Clan Robertson of Inches, one of the oldest Highland clans of Scotland, so there. Hold on, that doesn't sound right. Sorry guys, let me just look this up really quickly. King Alexander reigned from the 6th of July 1239 to the 19th of March 1286. Are you kidding me? They couldn't even get the sodding dates right? You know, for a movie that's supposed to celebrate Scottish history, they're severely lacking any credibility so far. What excuse could they possibly have for cocking up this early in the movie?
Historians from England will say I am a liar.
Oh, shut the f***. Okay, so the reason why I think this is an inaccuracy is because I don't believe any Fallschirmjäger would be cheeky enough to wear an Edelweiss, not without getting his head kicked in by a Gebirgsjäger.
Hitler's dead.
Holy shit.
Shot himself in Berlin.
No dude, he hasn't. This is April 11th and Hitler didn't shoot himself until April 30th. So, unless they remain frozen in that spot for over 2 weeks, then what he just said is absolute malarkey.
Malarkey. Malarkey's slang for bullshit, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Hitler by this point was alive and kicking. Hell, he was probably still in his bunker bitching about Mass Effect Andromeda.
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff steigert war Befehl!
So moving on from that, we have the most famous inaccuracy in all of Band of Brothers. No, seriously, it's very impressive. In fact, it's a bit of a showstopper. It's gonna make you go, oh? When you hear about it. And then the credits appear, stating that Albert Blythe never recovered from the wounds he received in Normandy. He died in 1948. Except he didn't. He recovered from his wounds and died in 1967.
What? Your Grace! Your Eminence!
That's exactly how I reacted when I found out. I mean, how in the hell did they miss that? But imagine if Blythe didn't die in 1967. Wouldn't it be hilarious if he had lived to see Band of Brothers air on television and he's watching an entire episode dedicated to him? He's feeling pretty chuffed about it, he's enjoying it, and then at the very end it says that he died. Okay. Now, he had been watching the situation developing in Scotland like a hawk. Well, either this is some sloppy writing or William Wallace is being melodramatic. I like to think it's the former, since I wouldn't want to imagine William Wallace, the hero of Scotland, being too stupid to tell the difference between 2 years and 2 decades. In 1296, there is a record of him and an English soldier stealing a keg of beer from some lady's house. Typical laddish behaviour, I know, but I wanted to point out the difference between the real Wallace and the infallible version we see in the movie. Basically, flat out saying that Alexander the Great had a bit of an Oedipus complex with his mum. What's an Oedipus complex, you ask? Well, the myth goes that Oedipus was a Greek king who killed his father and married his mother. Sigmund Freud then used the term to describe an unconscious desire of a child, like a boy, having repressed sexual feelings towards his mother.
What are you saying? That I wanted to fuck my mother?
No, it's a primal fantasy.
Have you ever seen my mother?
Paul.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
It's Freud.
Well, then Freud's a sick fuck, and you are too for bringing it up.
It's...
Now that is a normal reaction. First of all, I just want to let you know that prima nocta never really existed. At least there is no evidence of the English ever enforcing this. More than likely, it's just a medieval myth, kind of like the chastity belt.
Maid Mary.
A chastity belt?
It's an everlast.
Here they are, wearing kilts with little to no armour against an English army fully clad in armour, and by some miracle, they win. How? They're practically wearing nothing, and some of them aren't even carrying real weapons. Like, honestly, what is that? Is that a stick? Look, mate, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I don't think you're taking this very seriously.
All right, lads. I'm no time for these bastards. Let's go home.
Glad to see this guy has some common sense at least. Oh, wait, no. Mel Gibson has to make a speech first. This should be good.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
So despite having no armor, being outnumbered, and being poorly ill-equipped, it's through the power of freedom that the Scots win the day. Ah, so if only Native Americans believed in freedom, then maybe they would have won. I guess they didn't believe in freedom hard enough. I mean, look at this. There is no tact whatsoever with this battle. The Scots and the English assemble on an open field, and they simply smash into each other, and eventually, somehow, the Scots win. Okay, so enough of that rubbish. You see, unlike in the movie, the Scots actually use clever tactics instead of clever speeches. Oh, by the way, I just want to quickly point out before I go into the actual battle, there was no incident where the Irish conscripts shake hands and swap sides with the Scots. I can think of no other reason of this being included in the film, other than the filmmakers wanting to give the English the finger. They probably just didn't see the point in fighting for a lost cause.
Hey, I'm all about noble death. Pointless noble death, on the other hand.
Yep, I'm sure they saw the same way too. So the next thing that happens in the movies, we see Wallace go on a killing spree, taking revenge on the Scottish nobles who had betrayed him in Falkirk, and I think it's pretty obvious by this point that never actually happened either. Because William Wallace had more important things on his mind, like the liberation of his country, rather than taking some petty revenge that doesn't solve anything. So, with all this being done to him, do you really think he was at all capable to be able to shout this stupid line? Freedom! I kinda doubt it. In my opinion, the real man and his great deeds are far more interesting than the infallible Jesus figure that's presented on screen. Just in case you didn't get it, you're supposed to hate this guy. He's the Judas, he's the traitor. Let's not explore his motivations, his political beliefs, or his reasons to fight his fellow countrymen. You're supposed to dismiss him and label him as a backstabber. And that's generally about it. For the rest of the movie, they just drone on and on about freedom. But freedom from what?
He uses no firearms.
You see, to those who honor the old ways, Katsumoto is a hero.
He's also an idiot. I'm sorry, but if Katsumoto doesn't see the advantages in using projectile weapons, then he really is an idiot. Historically speaking, the samurai were never stupid enough to scoff at the idea of using guns. Well, at least the ones who survived.
Freedmen. Oh, then you're freed men who will have the opportunity and the privilege of fighting in the king's army, aren't you?
That is by far the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in a historical movie. No wonder Benjamin Martin's character is only loosely based on Francis Marion, because Francis Marion was a slave owner. In fact, Francis Marion's slaves ran away from his plantation to fight for the British, which says a lot about the guy. I think I would give audiences the benefit of the doubt to accept the main protagonist if he was a slave owner.
Never underestimate your audience. They're generally sensitive, intelligent people who respond positively to quality entertainment.
Too right, mate. And what's worse is that this scene seems to be an attempt to villainize the British by having them kidnap these black workers just to oppress these poor plantation owners. That the British are simply using slaves as tools of war. The solution presenting the turmoil of Alexander's inner demons is through shouting. Lots and lots of shouting.
That's a lie! He was my father! I loved him!
He was not your father!
You've taken from me everything I've ever loved! Made me you! Loud noises!
Can you see the difference here? The gentle swelling of the music and the look of hope and determination in his eyes. This has a totally different tone than the one before. Here the film is twisting the American proclamation of freedom to be noble and just, whilst the British version is the exact opposite. The truth of the matter is that when the British first declared their promise of freedom to slaves, it scared the shit out of the Americans. So when they made their offer, it was out of desperation, not out of noble sentiment.
I'm glad.
Now, I know it's not safe to jump to conclusions, but I just can't shake this feeling that the Patriot has a very anti-British sentiment.
This is murder!
Well, Reverend, they're redcoats. They've earned it.
But that just could be my interpretation. However, the film's objective is clear, and that is to villainize the Brits as much as possible. As antagonists, they are comically portrayed to be bloodthirsty, brutish thugs. Every conceivable negative stereotype that's attributed to the British is amplified. Pompous, stuck-up, and arrogant are to name a few. This is the moment when the Patriot can no longer claim to be based on history. Take, for example, the impact of the infamous Boston Massacre, and only 5 people died there, probably making it the most unmassacring massacre in the history of massacres. So, what's this movie's reason for this massacre not being common knowledge?
The honour is found in the end, not the means. This will be forgotten.
No one forgets stuff like this. Like this scene, for example, where in the final battle, Benjamin Martin literally stabs Tabitha Torse with the American flag. Did he really think that this was the best way to tell a story?
Let's hear from the top, every detail. I think the best way to tell a story is by starting at the end, briefly, then going back to the beginning, and then periodically returning to the end, maybe giving different characters' perspectives throughout. Just to give it a bit of dynamism, otherwise it's just sort of a linear story.
Just tell us what happened.
Exactly, you're not Quentin Tarantino. This is Alexander. Okay, you can cut now. Bloody hell, I'll do it!
Konnichiwa, History Buffs. Watashi no namae wa Nick Hodges. Watashi wa hotondo no Last Samurai anata ni teiji suru koi de aru.
Okay, it was an expedition sent by the United States to end Japan's self-isolation, and leading it was Matthew Perry.
What? I didn't even know that. Why didn't you tell me?
No, not that Matthew Perry. Commodore Matthew Perry. They had never seen such ships before. I mean, it would be like the equivalent of that scene in Independence Day where the alien spaceships float over the White House.
Now what do we do? Address the nation. There's gonna be a lot of frightened people out there.
Yeah. I'm one of them.
Unlike that one other really overrated movie. So what, they're gonna kill a bunch of Smurfs in this one spot in the jungle? They have a whole planet to contend with! I'm sure there's more of them!
That doesn't make sense.
So, it makes sense why Organ would want to switch sides in the first place, and at least he did it for a noble cause, unlike Jake Sully, whose reasons in doing so seemed to be primarily motivated out of his curiosity and interspecies erotica. Dishonorable to use guns. The samurai have been used to shooting each other for 300 years, so what the fuck is he talking about?
Our men are running from the battlefield!
A shameful display!
In order to justify that, he gives us some really stupid scenes. Like, I find it really hard to believe that the Greeks had never seen monkeys before, especially since the Persian Empire's trade network was vast, and they would have brought in all kinds of animals from Africa and India. In fact, we see a bloody lion and a zebra back in Babylon.
They call this tribe Monkey.
I call this scene bullshit. Okay, I am now going to ask you a serious question, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Can you remember all of their names? You can't, can you? And I don't blame you for that. There's only so much information your mind can process in a short space of time. It's like when you go to a house party or a wedding, and you are introduced to loads of people at once. You are certainly not going to remember all of the names within 5 minutes of that meeting, because they haven't made any impression on you yet. Just like this movie. Here we're introduced to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people in 40 seconds. However, there is nothing to interpret in this movie. Alexander clearly wants to bang his mum.
It's your mom, dude.
Exactly! This is totally unnecessary! Yes, Alexander the Great was a mummy's boy, and instead be condemned as one of the worst monsters of all time. I seriously have no idea who started this stupid idea that people thought that the world was flat in the 15th century, because it's just ludicrous. The Greeks had already figured out that the world was round nearly 2,000 years ago. So does 1492 challenge the stupid idea?
It's round.
No, of course not. Are you kidding me? It's a Ridley Scott film.
Round.
I know, but apparently nobody else does. You see, the reason why all the monks laughed at him in real life was because this moron thought that the distance between Spain and Japan was only 3,000 miles to the west, when they already knew that Japan was nearly 7,000 miles to the east. And this turns out to be rubbish too. And yet 1492 makes it seem like it's business as usual, like they see this kind of stuff all the time.
Every happiness you can imagine. Every pleasure your fellow Greeks and your false gods have denied you, I will grant you. For I am kind.
This is great and all, but these chicks in here are kind of gross. Can I see the other 10?
No.
There's a couple of things wrong with this scene. Firstly, the movie makes it appear that Columbus made this offer in order to bolster the men and cajole them to keep going, when actually, this offer was made by the King and Queen of Spain beforehand. And when one of the men, Rodrigo de Triana, finally spotted land, Columbus cheated him of his pension. Aw, that's so sweet. But is that really what he said, though?
They ought to make good and skilled servants, for they repeat very quickly whatever we say to them. I think they can very easily be made Christians, for they seem to have no religion. Weapons they have none, for I show them swords, which they grasp by the blades, and cut themselves through ignorance. I could conquer the whole of them with 50 men, and govern them as I pleased.
Wow! That is like the exact opposite of what he just said in the movie! So I actually think it's quite disgusting when movie Columbus claims that rape would be punishable by the sword, when real Columbus gave women as gifts to his men in order to be raped. And yet, I can't understand how there are some people out there who can defend this monster, even after being told what he did. It's like they refuse to shake their indoctrinated belief that Columbus was a hero. Admiral Yi Sun-shin, who is probably one of the greatest admirals in world history. This guy would give Horatio Nelson a run for his money. He was that good. Where are they going exactly? Are they going to swim to the Japanese ships? I mean, you have to admit, this is pretty silly.
Our ship has been destroyed! All hands are lost!
Really? You're going to have a go at them for being boy lovers? Don't you think that's a bit rich coming from you guys? I mean, after all, many historians agree that it was quite common when Spartan men trained Spartan boys, they did a little bit more than just bang their shields. In fact, you can now watch 300 and know that Leonidas and all his men were buggered as children and buggered children. But hey, you know what? As long as it produces perfect soldiers, am I right?
Fine thrust.
Exactly.
What does your spy report?
To be honest, Your Grace, it's hard to believe. He says they're a bunch of poofters.
Explain.
Well, he says he saw the Spartans comb their hair and anoint their bodies with perfumes and scented oils. All of this whilst naked.
That's gay.
Yes, Your Grace, very gay. Very gay indeed, Your Grace. No doubt their gayness will prove a decisive factor in winning this battle.
Excellent. Let's not look into this any further. Attack!
So Xerxes plans this. For 10 years. In 10 years, he never bothers doing any real research on this enemy he's supposed to conquer. This idiot solution in defeating the Greeks was, well, they kicked our ass in Marathon even though we outnumbered them, so maybe the solution is to throw even more soldiers at them. In contrast, the Persians wore little to no armor, and their shields were made out of a much thinner wood, and some of them were even made out of bloody wicker, which Spartan weapons had no problems whatsoever in penetrating. So what's really infuriating to me is that the Persians know this! It makes sense in the movie why he looks like Sloth from the Goonies, as well as being combined with yet another unsavory character.
We're being followed.
It has followed us since Sparta.
He's been following us for 3 days.
A lot of people frown on the Yanks for not being in this war yet. I'd just like to say, if there are many more back home like you, God help anyone who goes to war with America.
On the other hand, you are a bunch of pussies for not having joined yet.